Welcome to another episode of Threads of Enlightenment. We have two special guests today. And as we do it here at Threads of Enlightenment, we welcome our guests to the family. And once they have started and introduced themselves, we consider them part of our family. And so we want to welcome both ladies here today. And what we do here at Threads is just turn it over to you. You tell us your what you're doing today, and then we're going to circle back and get all the juicy stuff, as they say. So I'm going to let you enjoy yourself and introduce, and then just tell us who you are and what you do today.
For having us. I happen to be
You're welcome.
Jennifer,
And I'm Stephanie.
so I'm not sure you'll eventually start to recognize.
You'll hear the difference in our voices. They're
Yeah,
pretty unique.
they are pretty unique. And we are a team of coaches. So we coach together. We're quantum relationship coaches.
Hmm.
And we love that title because, it just sparks people's conversation of what is that? So we kind of want people to know that we're a little different in what we do. So we help people create the relationships that they dream of, and that includes their relationship with themselves and their higher self. So it's not just about finding a mate, but it's how you relate to your world, mind, body, and spirit. So we love what we do, and yeah, that's kind of in a nutshell what we do.
Yep. So we have a Facebook group that is free for everyone. That is about 1,000 people strong right now. So we're very excited. We hit the 1,000 mark last week, and we had a little dance party at home. And so that means that we're just growing and changing lives. And we have a paid program. It's a group program called Love Gets Better Together. We really focus on the LGBT community. There's just not a lot out there for this community, and that's our niche. That's who we want to work with. We don't discriminate and say that other people are not allowed to come in, but that's what it's for. It's for LGBT and allies. And this group it's a smallish group right now, where we get together a couple times a month and talk about our relationships. And Jennifer and I teach skills to have better boundaries, better communication, and to absolutely fall in love with yourself. And we also, Jennifer is a minister as well. So she does weddings and all kinds of really fun stuff that way. And we do premarital coaching. So those are some of the things that we've got going on.
I want to tell you guys. I know you mentioned about your name. I personally love your name. I couldn't wait to get to you guys because I am very interested in how you define quantum relationships and so forth. So as we get into the podcast, I am coming right back to that question. So
We
And
love it.
we love to answer it.
excellent, excellent. So here you guys are. You're doing all of this stuff today. And I know it's both of you, but the question is to both. And but you can answer it individually, whoever wants to go first. Now, I personally believe life comes around and gives us these breadcrumbs that we have, and most of us do not live in awareness until we have been shaken. And so, because we are not in awareness, these breadcrumbs keep coming and happening and happening. And through, I don't want to say ignorance, but again, it's just simply because we are not aware
Lack of
that we don't pay,
consciousness.
yes, we don't pay attention to them until we have what I call the visitation. Something dramatic happens in our lives, and then you have to stop where you're at and begin to ask the questions. What just happened? How did it happen? And how can I change this? What do I need to do to change this? So, either one, Stephanie or Jennifer, whoever, what were some of those breadcrumbs that started to, looking back, that you can now recognize that were coming into your life to get you to a space to wake up?
Ooh,
Ooh, that's a
I
big
think
one.
there were a fair amount of breadcrumbs looking at the size of my round belly. Oh, we've been following the breadcrumbs for a long time. Were we supposed to eat them?
Oh, I don't know.
Oh, you want to go first?
No, I'll let you jump on
Oh
this
my
one
gosh.
first.
Okay. So, I think that the breadcrumbs start, you know, as soon as we land on the planet. In fact,
Yes.
I personally think they started long before I landed on the planet.
Hmm.
I believe myself and all of us to be spiritual beings who
Yes.
happen to land in physicality because we had more breadcrumbs to find in this
Hmm.
experience.
Yeah.
And I was born into a family that I was not well aligned with. I think as many of us are, and
Hmm.
even though I can see the threads genetically, ancestrally, it's like, okay, I see that that characteristic came from this grandfather, and this came from my dad, and this came from my mom. I
Yeah.
can see
Yes.
those things. But I
Hmm.
also, obviously, it's a soul family that has come together
Yeah.
in physicality to learn. Um, but it wasn't well aligned. And I think if there was one word to describe my childhood, it was loneliness and feeling
Right.
disconnected.
Okay.
But I always kept following spirituality. I
Hmm.
was really, that was where my respite was. I loved the
Okay.
church, and I grew up in a Methodist church, and it was home away from home. I had where
Hmm.
I lived with my parents and my brothers, and then I had my grandparents, and a couple blocks away was the church. And that I wore that path well between grandma and
Hmm.
grandpa's and the church.
Yeah.
But through that there was lots of loneliness and pain and difficulty, and I just always knew I needed to go somewhere. There was always
Yeah.
this like
Yeah.
pull away, and I moved away for a long time. I was living in the Boston area for almost 20 years, finding myself and learning
Hmm.
to live on my own. And I really, it was a
Okay.
very, I did have people in my life. I was married for a while, but I've always been very feeling alone, but
Hmm.
wanting that connection.
Yeah.
So that was a big characteristic of my life, but always like seeking connection, but then being afraid of it.
Hmm.
It was
Okay.
that thing.
Yeah.
And always kind of living within this kind of spiritual studying life. And I was always struggling, and I
Hmm.
continue to struggle in many ways. But Jennifer and I met 13 years ago, and it's, yeah,
Okay.
about 13
almost
and a half.
13, almost 13 years,
Yeah,
just shy of
just
13.
shy of
Wow.
13 years ago. And at that point in my life, I had had serial relationships with, I was, I had come out when I was 29.
Hmm.
I had been married to a man. So
Hmm.
I mean, that was not something that, had even dawned on me when I was a child that I might not be attracted to men. Um,
Hmm.
so I met Jennifer when I was 36 and
Mm.
37. Yeah, 36, 37. And I had done so much work personally. I was getting out of a graduate program in social work, and I knew what I wanted. I knew that, and I just was sure that this was the path. This was the time of my life that things were going to get easy, and things were going to be okay. I have a master's degree now.
Mhm.
I'm in the top 3% of people who have been educated on the planet. I've done it. I've
Yeah,
done the spirituality. I've done this. I know how to sit in meditation for an hour or two at a time. I can
yeah,
do
yeah.
this. And life was really good for about a year.
Mhm. Okay.
And then Jen had a medical procedure that went bad. And yes, this is part of her story, but I'm just going to talk about my response to her
Mhm. Yeah,
medical
yeah.
procedure. um, Being a child of a family that didn't function well, and the oldest child and the only girl in the family, I became the helper, the fixer,
Mhm.
the super
Yeah.
girl.
Mhm.
And I didn't even realize how much that was impacting my life and making the decisions. I mean, I don't know that I would have become a social worker without having that kind of little superhero complex going on. I
Mhm.
have to
Yeah,
fix the world. It's my job.
yeah, yeah.
Um, and when Jennifer got hurt, I took on the role of fixing everything. and taking
Mhm.
care of everything. She had a 5-year-old son when I met her. And so he was 6 now, and I had never been a parent before, and that had been a tremendously overwhelming idea for me to jump in and be a parent, because I
Mhm.
was not gonna be a parent because of my childhood, and I was like, "Oh, no. I ain't doing
Yeah.
that to a kid. Not doing it, not parenting, no way." And, but I took on the parenting role, and I jumped into it beautifully, and I
Yeah.
think, but I jumped in too deep, and then when she became hurt, she was, got she was very ill. She was pretty much in bed all the time, and I was new in my career. I was a new parent
Mhm.
of a 6-year-old, and
A
I
fairly new relationship.
a fairly new relationship, and now I was a
Wow.
caregiver.
Wow.
And I put on the superhero costume and I did not take it off for many
Mm.
years. And I would talk with her and we would try to work out, how to change the dynamics between us. I felt empty and alone and, all the things that I was trying not to have,
Mhm.
because I was trying to erase the pain from my childhood through connection with her, and all of a sudden it was all back.
It was there.
A parent, of my partner,
Mhm.
who couldn't take care of anything, obviously couldn't
Yeah.
take care of me. She couldn't take care of
Yeah.
herself. A chaotic lifestyle that I didn't choose, feeling like I had to take care of everything, and nothing else in my life. No friends. My family was not really involved with me. I was just completely alone on this island of superhero land.
Yeah.
And after 5 years, I hit bottom. I
Mhm.
had There was nothing left of me. We had moved out to Las Vegas to try to have a better
Climate.
climate for Jennifer, and I hated it from the minute we drove in. I remember driving down the street
Mhm.
to the house that we had rented sight unseen
Mhm.
and having
Mm.
this sinking feeling and thinking, this is not going to work.
Wow.
And it didn't. And I don't think it was like a law of attraction thing. It was just like this knowing that this was the
Yeah.
wrong decision. And I hit the lowest bottom that I've ever hit in my life. I started kind of separating myself from Jennifer emotionally. I was working 3 jobs to make ends meet. Um, just I was not sleeping, and the job that I took, I was on call 24/7. It was just insane, and I kind of went there. And one night was my dark night of the soul.
Mhm.
This was around, I think, 8 o'clock in the evening. It was a misty, dark evening in Las Vegas. It wasn't quite cold yet, for the winter, but it was cool. And I was sitting in a bedroom by myself, our spare room, in the dark, meditating,
Mhm.
and I just got the impulse to run, and I
Wow.
did. I walked out to the closet, I put on my down vest, and I walked out the door. I took nothing
Mm.
with me, not a dollar, not anything. I just left. And I turned around and looked at the house as I walked out the door, and I started running.
Wow.
And I walked and jogged for 17 miles that night. And I got to this point on the road. I just walked one road out of
That
town.
is impressive.
I was just done. I was just done with this
Yeah.
life. And I sat down at one
Mhm.
point because there was no choice. I could go up on an on ramp for a highway going out of the city,
Mhm.
or I could walk off into the desert. And I didn't know which way to turn. And so
Mm.
I sat down next to a bush, and it's like 5 o'clock in the morning by this time. And I meditated.
Mm.
And I knew that the next move was going to decide my future.
Mhm.
And I sat down in the darkness and I meditated, and I I left the body. I don't know, but I had this vision of myself being connected heart to our sun
Mhm.
with this bright yellow gorgeous sunbeam.
Mm.
And I knew that if I walked on, that light would be severed.
Mm.
And the next thing I knew, I was standing up and starting to walk back.
Wow.
And that was the moment where I knew that I was connected by some I knew
Yeah.
that I was connected by something more than this physical world,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
that there was more than this physical love. It was more than responsibility. It was a spiritual connection.
Mm-hmm.
And I came back.
Wow.
And that was my moment of like, I know. No, there's no teaching, there's no learning, there's just knowing in
Mm-hmm.
that moment that I was connected. And I came back and there was big fallout from my dark
Yeah.
night of the soul. And
Yeah.
Jennifer and I did break up for 2 years,
Okay.
and we separated, and we both followed our path.
Mm-hmm.
And, I connected with A Course in Miracles and then The Way of Mastery. And I just went into an intense period of self discovery.
Okay.
And um, I, I'm not perfect in any way, but I know that I am connected to something greater than myself. And so that thread, that's the breadcrumbs really for me,
Yes.
that I've
Yes.
been
Mm-hmm.
following my whole life, and, looking at different religions, studying different religions, and always loving that idea of interconnection.
Yes. Yes.
And so I know that I am, and all the my work now with quantum relationship coaching is to help others see their interconnection,
Mm-hmm.
so that we can all see it and really
Mm-hmm.
all awaken upon this planet, so that this planet can awaken with us.
You're sick or in bed. How did you get in bed, and how did you get out of bed? Because you
Well,
have to have, while you're laying there, going through
absolutely.
your processes and
Absolutely.
dealing with the mind and the thought and all those things that will show up and condemn you because you're not 100% and all of those things. So, how did you begin to handle your journey? As Stephanie had just mentioned hers, how, and you were there in the midst of this. What was happening with you as well?
Well, for me, I just to make a long story short, I had a horseback riding accident when I was only 9 years old,
Mm,
which left me in a coma for a couple weeks, as well as a dislocated hip. And
okay.
so, I know that I had, a near death experience. There's no doubt in my mind that that's, I think, where my connection began for me,
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
knowing that there was something bigger than me, but not quite knowing what that was and having
what it
any
was. Yeah.
understanding of it. But due to that horseback riding accident, I then ended up with a chronic pain condition. At
Mm-hmm.
the age of 34, I had my hip replaced. A year
Wow.
later, I gave birth to my son. So when Stephanie and I met, although I was quite successful in my career, also had a master's degree, and
Mm,
very driven towards, you know, proving that I am capable of doing what I'm doing, because my childhood kind of left me independent. I had a mom
mm-hmm.
that had a severe mental illness. And so I always knew that I had to rely on me
Mm-hmm.
to have safety in life. That was the
Yeah.
only one that
Yeah.
could provide that safety for myself growing up.
Yeah.
So as an adult, I just, I was always striving and striving and striving to create that safety, and knowing that I was going to be a capable woman in this world of
Mm-hmm.
men, unfortunately. And
Yeah.
I don't mean that in any bad way, but we live in a
Yeah.
patriarchal society. So as a
Mm-hmm.
woman, you already have a struggle ahead of you to prove who
Yeah.
you are.
Yeah.
So I always was striving to
Mm-hmm.
be had the best education, create a career of my dreams, and then also deal with a chronic pain condition that just was with me.
Mm-hmm.
And as Stephanie said, I did have a medical procedure done, um, that was supposed to be helpful, and it went bad and made things worse than they were
Mm-hmm.
before the procedure.
Yeah.
And that took away my career. I
Wow.
became permanently disabled. And, that was one of my dark nights of the soul, because, as I said, I always was striving. And now all of
Mm-hmm.
a sudden, that carpet was pulled out from under me, and I didn't know who I was. I truly had no identity at
Yeah.
that point. I knew I was a mom,
Mm-hmm.
and a partner, but my physical disability had become so severe that I just kind of fell into this pit. and I just sunk and sunk and sunk and didn't know how to pull myself out. And I had felt that I had pretty much lost my connection to that higher power. I didn't know that, why would God do something like this? I mean, I definitely fell into that victim mentality that
Yeah.
many of us in society fall into because we don't know any different.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know that there was more opportunities out there for me, and that reconnecting with that inner spirit um, could give me my life back. And it wasn't until our relationship fell to pieces and I was
Mm-hmm.
now left still disabled, still chronic pain, and now back as a single parent, because I was a single parent when we met,
Yeah.
and our son was only 5, and now here he was 10, and I was a single parent again and even more disabled. And I
Yeah.
had to figure out, what am I going to do? And at first my drive to get better was for my son. It wasn't
Mm-hmm.
for me.
Yeah.
But as I worked on that journey of connection, I realized that I needed to nurture me 100%,
Mm-hmm.
because I can't give from an empty cup. And
Yes.
that was what I was always trying to do. And that's what eventually, my cup ran dry. And
Yeah.
so I had to fill it again. And I filled it with my spiritual connection. I found a program that just connected with me about self love. It started with just a 40-day self love program. And I'd never thought about self love in this way.
Mm-hmm.
And for 40 days, I mean, and it was based on the Course in Miracles. So it was, kind of um, being, Jesus' 40 days in the desert. So
Yes.
it
Yes.
was my 40 days. And it was, what was interesting was, at the time, Stephanie and I were trying to co parent, but
Mm-hmm.
the first year we were separated, it was very hard to even be friends. We just had so many hard feelings, but we still were co parenting. So I still
Yes.
saw her and we still communicated, but not well. And
Mm-hmm.
then one day she came over to pick up our son for her normal visitation. And she found me where she always did, in my bed. And
Mm-hmm.
sitting on my nightstand was A Course in Miracles. And for anyone who may not have ever seen A Course in Miracles, it's over 1,000 pages. So it's a
Mm-hmm.
very large book. You can't
Wow.
really miss it if it's, in
Mm-hmm.
someone's presence. I mean, it's, real thick. And she looked, and like her mouth just dropped, because I was raised Jewish. And so this was
Yeah.
so different, because here's a channeled text that was channeled through Jesus. And I was a
Yeah.
Jewish girl, but I
Yeah.
never
Yeah.
felt, that was another thing, that I was always striving and striving for connection, and I never felt it. So I
Yeah.
knew finally, once I found my spiritual path, that that was why, because that wasn't where I was going to find the enlightenment. The
Yeah.
enlightenment was going to be found in a different way. And so, um, but eventually, and our story turns really into the fairy tale. We both found that connection, and it eventually brought us back together.
Yeah. The thing that was so
That's
amazing about seeing the Course in Miracles is that that's
yeah.
what I had been studying,
And I didn't know
Oh
that.
wow.
and she didn't. She had been studying it, so we'd been
Yeah.
studying it separately, not speaking about
That
anything like
uh-huh.
that, because
Yeah.
basically we were saying, "What time should I pick him up? 7 o'clock.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll be there." That's it. And then I
Yeah.
walk in, and she's reading the thing that is helping me find myself, and I'm like,
Hmm.
"Oh my gosh."
What are you doing with
Wow.
that book?
And I just left.
That-
I'm like, I have nothing to say. Gotta go.
That's a great story, though. Here you both are, and it's really interesting. It's a similar path if you listen to your story.
Yes.
It's just that one got injured physically, and the other one, it was just similar. The need to be with someone, that need that's driving you both,
Hmm.
and you had your situation, and how you became um, connected. And I keep saying that that connection is because we are spirits
Yes.
in housed in a human form, in a body,
Hmm.
and the body basically keeps us here on this planet.
Hmm.
Outside of the body, we are able to roam in maybe different universes and so forth.
Hmm.
But because the body keeps us legal here to be at this time, to live at this particular spot. And so, but the spiritual connection is still there. And so,
Hmm.
here, both of you guys are getting your spirit awakened to the reality that number one, you are spirits. But I love also the fact that here you are dealing with the subject of loving yourself, the self love aspect of it. And when you start that journey, you have truly started, because what's happening is that you start looking at all the darkness that is within you, and you have to learn how to come to terms with those darknesses. You have to learn how to love yourself with all of those darknesses.
Hmm.
The darknesses are self doubt, self loathing, hatred. You
Shame.
go name,
Judgment.
shame. List goes on and on. And then you have to, within that uh, uh, um, pile of stuff, you have to look now and love you. And then once, I believe that once we can really understand that when you now love yourself, there you can look around and love me, because you are your biggest critic. And so if you can love that, you can surely look at me and go, you know what? I love you. I know
Hmm.
Stephanie had said she's not perfect, and none of us are, because I think that's what the personal journey is all about,
Hmm.
is for us to get to know how we are, but the journey in the sense where we have come to an awareness where we can move from one space to another. The journey doesn't end per se, but to a place where we become servants. That's the ultimate place to be, I think, in your journey as you begin to become. But you're still doing both. You're still enlightening yourself, becoming a better student of yourself, and in the same vein, you're able to transmute and translate your experience into a tangible food that someone else can digest and get them from where they're at. So here you guys are. You saw she was doing the same study. You took off, and you want nothing to do with this. So how did you now start coming back to have that conversation that you needed to have in order that you can move forward? How did that conversation, no, how did it, what caused that conversation to happen? And how was that conversation?
Well, this is kind of funny. I mean, I was just so full of anger. I really was. But I was very devoted to the mother of my son
Hmm.
and this being who needed to be well.
Yeah.
So, but I wasn't taking responsibility for her wellness. I was just caring about it. So that was a
Hmm.
shift for me,
Yeah.
a big shift. And Jennifer had made the decision to do some significant treatments for her pain. It's called the ketamine treatment, which is basically she gets a ketamine infusion, and she had to go to a city about an hour and a half away to get this treatment, and she needed a driver,
Hmm.
and
And it was an all day
it was an
procedure.
all day
So
procedure.
it was all,
Hmm.
I had to be there at like 6 in the morning, and it wasn't done until 2 or 3 in the afternoon.
And it was
Wow.
it was it's a new procedure, and it
Hmm.
could have some, and it basically, ketamine is
And anesthesia.
it's an anesthesia,
Yeah.
but it's an hallucinogen,
Hmm.
and so you
Mm.
can be kind of goofy when you get off of
Yeah.
it.
I'm gonna get out. Hmm.
And I was very concerned that something would go awry in this procedure, and I'm still her medical power of attorney, which
Yeah.
I'm fine to be. And I was uncomfortable with her going by herself or with a stranger.
Hmm.
And if somebody had to make a quick medical decision, I wouldn't be there to do it. So I
Yeah.
started taking her. And one night, we actually went the night before and stayed over because she had to be there at like 5 a.m. and we didn't want to leave
Mm-hmm.
at 3.
Mm-hmm.
So we stayed overnight and we're we rented a hotel room and we're laying there at like 2 o'clock in the morning, kind of talking. There was a lot of noise, so we couldn't sleep. And we were talking about our different spiritual paths and what it was like. And all of a sudden, out of my mouth, now I had started going to the spiritual center that I was in love with.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
I guarded that thing. I didn't want anybody that I didn't like near this place because it was
Mm-hmm.
my place. I was
Yes.
and so we're laying there in the middle of the night, and I definitely didn't want her there because
Mm-hmm.
I didn't like her very much yet.
Uh-huh.
Out of my mouth, in the darkness of the dimmest hour of night, out of my mouth pops, "You should come to Unity."
Mm-hmm.
And I looked around the room like, who just said that?
You said it.
And if I could have sucked it back in, because the fear rose.
Yeah.
And
Uh-huh.
I'm like, what the? And then, the soothing voice said, don't worry, she never stays anywhere long. And I said, okay, it'll be fine. Well, she came. I was so
Mm-hmm.
uncomfortable. So
Yeah.
just like, oh my gosh, there's someone who is encroaching on my heaven, who is not in my
Mm-hmm.
heavenly space.
Yeah.
And she stayed, and she stayed, and she stayed,
Mm-hmm.
and she stayed, and she starts getting involved in stuff. And everybody's the cool part was all of my friends were telling her how awesome I was. So that was
Yeah.
kind of fun. It was like, this woman is amazing. They thought I was dating her, and I'm like, I'm not dating her. I'm not dating her. And but eventually we ended up in the same class, the Way
Mm.
of Mastery, and we didn't talk about it beforehand. I signed up immediately. I was like,
Yeah.
the first book is called The Way of the Heart, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's mine. I need the Way of the Heart.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like first on the list. And then a couple weeks later, I looked down and her name's on the list. And I'm like, what
Mm-hmm.
the? So we sat in this class. I sat by my mentor, the
Mm-hmm.
the the spiritual leader, and her fiance at the time. He was kind of my mentor, and Jennifer sat next to her. I sat next
Uh-huh.
to him. We as
Uh-huh.
far apart from each other as we could get, because I'm of us was happy that the other one was in it. We're like, oh
Wow.
man. And by 6 months in,
It was a 1 year
it was a
class,
1 year class.
met every week
Wow.
for a year.
Wow.
And it was the first 3 or 4 months was just terrible. I didn't want to talk at all, but we
Mm-hmm.
had to because we had to be involved.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so more and more, what is happening? We're having a common language. We
Yeah.
have something more to talk about than our son.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
we're seeing and we're going through this forgiveness practice.
Yes.
And we're seeing the divinity in each other.
Uh-huh. Because we're seeing the divinity in ourselves.
Yeah. There's this and I love this. You know, you guys started out where you had an attraction to each other. And because of life happening,
Yeah.
the attraction goes sour because I think it's a matter of um, we don't know how to manage the situation.
Right.
The caregiver wants to be in charge of everything
Mm-hmm.
and make it her responsibility to make sure that Jennifer's healing was her responsibility. It's not yours, it's Jennifer's. And so Jennifer had to learn how to take that. But here you are, and you guys are in this thing, and you fell out of love, as they said, and you out of all of this darkness that came. But there is something more powerful happening that you guys probably didn't even notice. The devotion to each other was incredible.
Mm.
As you are telling me this story, here you are, and the reasons why you're saying, yeah, whatever, whatever, but still that devotion to
Mm-hmm.
each other is there as the baseline. What a great story and a great baseline to have
Yeah.
to build a relationship on, because a lot of people don't even have that baseline
Right.
that and the devotion is such a strong thing that it kept you guys in the darkness. It was still there,
Mm-hmm.
and here you are in class beginning to strip away the layers of the dark selves. You began to implement the principles of success. Stephanie, you talked about it. I didn't mention it earlier, but you said it. Shifting your perspective. You started shifting your perspective, and I know Jennifer had to do it in order to
Oh, of
come
course.
from the bed. You have to start shifting your perspective, and then you went on this journey about your self love. And then, as you began to strip away to see the core of who you are, and you guys recognize it and look at each other and go, wait a minute, we, there's something here. And
Mhm.
so you're in this course for a year, 6 months into it, and you guys began to look at it differently. Now, from a different set of eyes, um, uh, how, as you now begin to look at the richness of who you are individually, how did you guys say, okay, I think we we need to come together because I feel this way? How did that come about?
Well, I think throughout the 2 years that we were separated, I still had that flame of hope that at some point we would find our way back together because
Hmm.
I just knew that we had a soul connection, and I didn't know how to define it at that point. But
Yeah, but
now
Stephanie
look,
didn't even with you. So I know you.
no, and I first in some ways I do believe if there wasn't our son involved,
Yeah,
Oh, definitely.
because she may have had no reason to continue a connection with me even during that dark time for both of us. And
but
that
that incident that happened to her on the highway was significant because it kept her there. She walked back 17 miles. So that was the incident that would have kept her, um, regardless of what happening, because she had a spiritual encounter that, when you have those type of encounters and you're exposed to a bigger, power than yourself, you don't run. You may lose your way sometimes, but
Mhm.
you're still longing for that experience, that knowledge that you gain. I knew she wasn't going anywhere.
she
I
didn't
was
know
just
that though.
wanting to know. She had to have that experience so that she would stay anyway because of her personality, and you can
Yeah.
tell that from listening to you guys. And so, um, that how things usually work is that you need anchor. She was anchored into that relationship through that encounter, and you were anchored into the relationship because of your love towards her from the time that you guys met. So you're both anchored in. It's just I was curious to figure out did you guys now
Well,
to have that communication, and how did you make the decision? Let's
yeah. Well, as Stephanie said, we were about 6 months into this very in-depth spiritual awakening through, the book, The Way of the Heart. And um, we had common language now. We had other things to talk about. We
Mhm.
were becoming friends. There were
Mhm.
only 8 of us in the class. So we were two of
Okay.
the 8. So
It
it
was tight.
it was a very tight class, very tight group. And not only were we able to work through some of the stuff on our own, but in the class. And it
Yes.
just was amazing how, things just opened up. So, after 6 months of being in the class, Stephanie finally said, let's try dating.
Well, Jennifer begged me. Come on now.
I said,
I was waiting for the
yeah,
people
well,
that. I was
I
waiting
said,
for the
are
people
you
that.
really sure? Are you really sure that we can't make a go of this? Because we have become friends now
Yes.
again.
Hmm.
So I did. I kept that flame alive,
Yeah.
and she finally broke down and
You
said,
broke her
"Okay,
down, huh?
let's
Yep.
try
She wore
dating."
me down.
Wore down.
No,
How
I had
long? How long was from the beginning, Stephanie, from when you left and you did your walkabout? and then you turn back to that day that you said, okay, let's where she broke you down. How
I think
long that space,
I
you
think that
think?
was a good year and a half, almost 2
It was
years.
almost 2 years
Almost 2 years.
from,
Okay.
Yeah.
yeah, because I think it
So
was like October of when that event occurred for Stephanie, and we started dating again 2 years later, almost 2 years later in July. So it was almost a full
wow.
2 years.
Yeah.
Okay. Not bad. That's a lot of growth. I mean, serious growth within
Serious
that
growth.
time. That's
Yeah, I
serious
mean,
stuff.
I wasn't even able to physically walk. I was on crutches.
Yeah.
I was in very bad physical condition. I was fitted for a wheelchair, told I wouldn't walk
Hmm.
again. And, that's the furthest from the truth of who I am
Yeah.
today.
This
Yeah.
woman can outpace me on a bicycle now. And I'm tough. This woman is tough. Oh my gosh.
uh, is a testament. Both of you guys are a testament to the power of the mind, the human
Yes.
mind,
Yeah.
and that coupled with the spiritual being, they can achieve much. They can even drag the body along and tell her, "Get up,
Mhm.
get up."
Mhm.
And uh, Jen, testimony to the being in the bed, and now you can outride Stephanie on the bike. So that's a testament of the power of the mind. So tell
Mhm.
me about, okay, you guys decided to date, and you got married. How
Mhm.
long before you got married?
It was another couple years
Yeah, we started dating in July, and then
when
um,
we I think we
by the
started
be-
dating in July, and by the next spring we were looking for a new place to live together because I had moved into their tiny apartment with them after
Hmm.
like another 6 or 8 months. Like I was kind of
six
staying
or
there.
8 months,
Excuse me.
it was really only about 2 months. You moved in when school
Okay, yeah, it was
started.
like 6 or 8 months after that we started looking for another place. I'm
Right.
sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Once we started dating,
I
um,
just started staying there.
she started
Yeah.
staying, and
It
you
took,
know,
but actually it wasn't until like December, January that I started staying because we kept it from our son for several months.
because we didn't want to
Really?
hurt him.
Yeah.
We did not want to
Okay.
hurt him, and he saw that we were getting along well, and we were parenting on
So
a.
we were just being friendly in front of him, never any PDA or anything like that. So
Gotcha.
that was pretty funny.
But then he caught us.
Then he caught us kissing each other goodbye.
And
So
he looked out the door and he says, "What are you
with
two
his big grin on his face, he
doing?"
was so happy. He was so cute. Um, so yeah, that
So
took another. Go
so
ahead.
talk to me about, okay, you guys are together. Another year, maybe year and a half, you got married. About.
Hmm. Yep.
So did the outreach, the quantum relationship, where was that given birth? Where was that given birth? At what conversation did you say, "Hey,
Let's do
we
this.
can do
Yeah,
this"?
well,
Yeah.
we took the course that we were talking about,
The way of
the way
mastery.
of mastery for the full year,
Hmm.
and then the following year,
About halfway through.
about at the end of February, our spiritual leader told us that she was leaving the 1st of April. She had taken a new position and was moving
Okay.
to another state, and so she was totally leaving our spiritual center that we were very involved in. And they taught this class every year. So now here's this class that started in January and is supposed to go a full year. We're losing their teacher as of the 1st of April. And we
Wow.
felt really bad because of what it had done for our life,
Yeah.
and it had given us our life back and our
Yeah.
relationship back. So we stepped up and decided to facilitate the class in the absence of our spiritual leader leaving. So we took
Hmm.
over the class, and then we
Okay.
ended up teaching it
For
for
another year,
another
2
year,
years.
2 years. We taught it 3 years then. And at that point, Stephanie being a social worker, she was in her own private practice,
Hmm.
and it just seemed like the right thing to take the next step into coaching for her. Because
Hmm.
when you are in that mental health world, you're kind of in a
Yes.
box of
Mm.
treatment.
Yeah.
You can't go too far spiritually in
Yeah.
a mental health setting. They don't really approve of that real well. And
Mm-hmm.
because we had had such an amazing change in our life by going on this journey, we wanted to be able to see what else we could do for folks.
Yeah.
And it just kind of went from, okay, we've been teaching together for this long. We really have a great dynamic of doing this. Stephanie wanted to shift her practice and not have it anymore and
Hmm.
be able to coach people in life and about
Yeah.
that mind body connection. And that's kind of what birthed
Yeah.
Enchanted Awakenings for us.
Yeah. I
Who
just,
came up with the name, the quantum relationship coaching?
yeah, that was me. I'm the wordplay person.
I
You know,
love the name.
yeah, it
It's just powerful.
it really is. And there are so many coaches doing, like life skills. And,
Hmm.
if you have to, learn these basic things, and it's like cognitive behavioral sort of thing. And but we study Course in Miracles and Way of Mastery, and we talk about holy relationships, and that this
Hmm.
being a container of awakening. And
Yeah.
that's what we want to have people do: awaken within this beautiful container of a relationship. And that's
Yes.
quantum.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely. Telling you, this has been really wonderful for me. I just want to thank you guys for coming by Threads of Enlightenment. This has been so much fun. And to hear your stories, because what I do here is I invite people like yourself to talk about your path, how you get it, how you moved from one space to the other, how you overcame the knowledge and the wisdom you walk through, people with the food that you have learned to digest. You're able to cook a good meal, as they say,
Indeed.
and you're able to feed someone. So usually I have this conversation because I want people to get to know that you guys are out there. A lot of people don't know where to go. And so that's why I have you guys start with your story,
Hmm.
that they can see what you have accomplished. And then I take them to take you guys to the beginning, because I want them to see what you went through to make this, um, that this dream or this thing that you have created outside of your relationship, where they can come now and feed. My job is to then bring them to you guys. All I do at Threads of Enlightenment is entertain wonderful people like you. And then I take my audience and my members and subscribers and I send them to you guys, because I think you have the skills that they need.
Hmm.
Um, I think you have all of the skills, the mental tenacity, the people that are in relationships that uh, don't think they have a chance. I am talking to two people that have can prove you wrong. And so I suggest that all those that are listening that are in a relationship that is not going well, I want you to get in touch with Stephanie and Jennifer. I want you to them. I'm going to provide their sites and every information. Get to them, get to understand the process, how have them get where they are today. I'm looking at them. I know you guys can't see them, but I'm looking at these women with beautiful smile. And you know that people that have smiles like that, dark places. And so
Mm.
I am excited that they are here to help every one of you that are going through any type of relationship. I don't. It doesn't matter. Relationship is relationship. You get to them, and they will guide principles of success is visible in their life and in what they do. And you want to be around people that have those type principles within their lives. Ladies, I want to thank you for coming to Threads of Enlightenment and blessing us with your story, that you were so candid to share all of the darkness, and we receive it with graciousness. And it is our hope that you would enjoy being a part of this family, because we love you and what you do. So, both of you for coming to Threads.
Well, thank you so much. And
Thank
it's
you.
always such a joy to be able to tell our story, and especially in such depth, because it reminds us where we've
Yeah.
been and allows us to
Hmm.
open even more
Yeah.
and to be
Yes.
able to help more people. So,
Yes.
and that's what it's all about. So, we're blessed to be part of this family and just so looking forward to getting to know everyone even more.
Excellent.
Yes,
Thank you,
thank you
ladies,
so
for
much.
coming. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Thanks.
Everyone who's listening to this podcast, we hope to continually help you to learn how to embrace moments of darkness, because it is in the darkness that we learn how to develop and use our abilities to truly see those parts of ourselves, often invisible to us, in the light. It becomes your responsibility to navigate through all of your trials, to find out who you truly are, and begin your journey to loving yourself, which is possibly one of the most difficult things you will ever do in your life. To love yourself and to find the real you. But always remember to enjoy the journey. Thank you for coming by. Please subscribe. And if you can support us financially, we deeply appreciate it.